Welcome back, Perfect Peeps, to Purrfect.dev. Today on the show, we're talking all about Tonic AI and how to create fake data. I have with me the VP of Marketing, Omed Habib. Hello, Omed.
Hello. How's it going, Alex?
It's going great. So tell me a little bit kind of about your background and how you kind of became the marketing VP at Tonic.
Yeah, so I started off my career as I should probably call it really more of a hobby when I was a young kid as a software developer, but I did kick off my career as a software engineer for about a decade. I was usually the guy asking why. So that naturally pivots you into a product management role. I think a lot of software engineers could probably sympathize with me. And then as a product manager, I was the guy asking why not. So that pushed me into product marketing on the outbound side. And so that kicked off my, I guess you could say, my third pivot in my career into marketing. And so I officially entered the dark side, as software developers would call it, but here I am. However, I should probably clarify that I only work within the DevOps space. So I
Gotcha.
work with developers still. I speak their language. I know their pains. And so the products that I like to market are products that they love.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's hard to make that switch, and I feel like if you're more like personable, you kind of tend to lean that way anyways. So it's cool that you have a technical background that you can emphasize. Sweet.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about Tonic. So for someone, listening that's never heard of Tonic AI and kind of what you guys are doing, what is it in like a paragraph?
Yeah. So Tonic.ai, we call ourselves the fake data company. And I know it's kind of a loaded phrase, but it's true. Our product essentially helps software developers be able to bootstrap a local dev environment with fake data instead of having to obviously use production data. That is an anti-pattern. You do not want to copy and paste data from production. You don't want to take a SQL dump and upload it onto a local unsecured dev environment. QA engineers, they want to QA features, and they want that software to behave like production as close as possible. And so our data does that. Pre-production sandboxes, maybe even like blue-green deployments possibly. There's all kinds of scenarios where you need your environment to mimic production as close as possible, and that's what Tonic does.
That's very cool. So I feel like often the questions I get when I'm setting up environments is how can we easily like backport this to a testing or a QA? Is Tonic helping assist or like automate that in kind of a CI/CD pipeline as well?
Yes. The short answer is yes. There's quite a few different tools that you probably are piecing together, unless you're using like a GitLab, which basically does everything, but we'll come back to that here in a bit.
Sure.
You're essentially piecing together what we'll call your CI/CD tool chain. So this is all different tools that you're piecing together, and each tool has a certain thing that it does within the lifeline of your service eventually getting it pushed out into production. The obvious version control, you have Git, you have your build server like Jenkins or something, you have your artifact, repository, your security, your, quality, actual deployment software. So one key component in that is how do you saturate your databases throughout that pipeline where you do the QA test against, or you do the security test against. Tonic plays that role. Matter of fact, we actually have a customer of ours who is using GitLab, and one of his feedback was, we use GitLab for pretty much everything except the one thing that's missing is giving us test data. And so they did plug in Tonic using a callback when a pipeline gets triggered. It then will automate using our API test data generation, which automatically will connect to your output database, push the test data in there, giving you a full-fledged test scenario that can then execute, your service as it graduates through the pipeline into production.
Sure. So is it actually taking like live data at that point, like scrubbing it out and like utilizing the data and I guess I'm trying to understand maybe the AI piece a little bit in there. Is it actually doing something truly like machine learning AI based, or is it just kind of doing like a scrub on that?
Yeah, so we just introduced a new feature called smart linking, which uses, and this is mathematics and AI and ML, far beyond my understanding. We
Sure.
have some very sophisticated PhDs, including two of our co-founders and one of our head of data science teams that have essentially put this together. And so before I describe what smart linking does, let me kind of tell you what the challenge here is with the way people do it today. You have, pretty complex databases, right? Take, for example, one of our customers like eBay. So you can imagine like, if they're running a database, how many tables they must have and how many columns each table must have, not to mention the petabytes of data of actual rows that exist there. Now, imagine you're a test data engineer that has to go in there and say, all right, well, how do I create sample data set that I can give to my developers and say, hey, here you guys go. Like, why don't you guys go and, develop a new feature or QA your next release on this, like a few rows of data or data that may not really actually behave. It's a pretty daunting task. And so the ML portion of this is using some pretty sophisticated machine learning, which if you're interested, we have a few blogs that we actually published on exactly how it works and the mechanics behind the science of it. But essentially, the way that developers would do it before is they had to go in there and manually figure out, all right, here's the column, and here's probably what the data type is, and here's probably what the relationship is between this and all the other columns. We have machine learning that goes in there and does it yourself or does it itself for you. So the idea
Okay.
here is that the more sophisticated the environment is, the more value you get from a feature like this. We call it smart linking. But here's the interesting thing is that smart linking is only one of the dozens of types of what we call a generator that you use to pass your data through. And so, for example, if you have a name column like first name, you pass it through the name generator. And so Tonic will take people's actual first names, pass it through, and then output a first name that you cannot reverse engineer.
Okay.
You can't hack it. It keeps it consistent as well. So if the person's first name is being used and anywhere else in that row, or even if there's a JSON object that you're storing in one of the columns and that person's first name is there, Tonic can detect that using XPath, the ability for you to build your own custom expression to search and replace everywhere. So the idea here is that your data is completely de-identified and it's impossible to reverse engineer it.
Oh, that's pretty incredible. So I guess along that same lines, can we talk a minute about like PII, PHI, and like the safety that allows for them, or like how it's accomplishing that?
Yeah. Well, as we know, obviously there's a lot of laws and regulations. We don't have to go into the reasons as to why developers need to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be worth kind of touching upon this. It's rare, but I do come across, a few engineering leaders who say that they actually think that it's an anti-pattern to use synthetic data in production, and the reason why they think that is because the argument, which is technically valid, is that it doesn't give you a true test scenario. So they use production data. I know it sounds crazy, and maybe they're lucky and they work in an environment where there's no PII, but for the most part, we almost all do, whether it's HIPAA or it's PCI or it's GDPR. There's some kind of regulation. Not to mention just pure best practice. The last thing you want is like some laptop getting stolen at a Starbucks, and then you have production data being used on that laptop, exposing all of your customer data. So that's not a good scenario. So I think it's safe to establish that using production data in a pre-production environment is the anti-pattern, right? So once we establish that, then we understand that, okay, so then what's next? Well, what's next is you have to de-identify that data. And that's where Tonic steps in. Now, there's a few different ways people do it today. They might write custom scripts. They might use arbitrary data. They might create data from scratch, for example, like with a Makaru, fantastic product. Mark actually is a friend of mine. I think he built we've done quite a few events together here at Tonic. And if you're building a product from scratch and you have no existing data, Makaru is definitely the tool to use. Tonic steps in to environments where you have an application that's already in production and you have a massive amount of data in production. And what makes us different from probably how you're either doing it today or what's out there is we do what's called mimic data. So we connect to your production environment and we will then pass it through the generators after some configuration by you telling Tonic what's sensitive and what's not. And then we automatically output it to an output database. So your data looks, acts, feels, behaves like production because it's made from production.
Sure.
And so we can go into more detail about how it behaves like production, but that's essentially how Tonic fits in the equation.
So if you're like looking at production data like that, and I think we talked a bit about it, but like if you have petabytes of data, but on your test systems, you don't want to pay for that and you don't want to move that much data. What does that tend to look like? Are you kind of dealing with a subset, or are you kind of pick and choose like I need that much data to see how my app's going to actually function in a real life scenario? How do you see people using that right now?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on who you're asking and what the use case is. So if I'm, for example, if I'm just going to spin up a local dev environment because I just want to build a feature, I probably don't need a petabyte of data in order to do that, right? I just need a little bit of data to actually make this, workable so I can write my feature. If that's the case, Tonic can generate for you a workable data set that is essentially a microcosm of what your production data could look like for your local laptop. I mean, if you have like a virtual environment or like a remote server where you want to saturate test data with the same amount of data as production, you can also do that. So it's like, all right, well, once I check in my code, then there's a sandbox that I go in there and I test against. Perfect scenario for having the exact same number of exact same amount of data quantity as production. Now, moving further upstream in your CI/CD pipeline, you have performance engineers that probably have to run some sort of like load testing or capacity testing scenarios. So with Tonic, we have a feature called synthesize mode, where you can then generate a macrocosm scenario of your data set. So you can, go like 10x just to kind of, test if you wanted to. Again, all the data is de-identified and safe. And I'll end with this last use case, which is like, well, hey, look, I have a feature that I'm building. I built it and I pushed it live, and there's a bug. I need actual production data to diagnose and fix this bug, right? So it's like now we're kind of, like in this like weird quasi scenario with our DevOps team, who's like their job is to keep data safe and they can't expose developers or give them access to production. But you also have a developer who's like, well, no, I got to fix this. Like I need production data. Well, that's where subsets come in. And today people do subsetting using all kinds of custom scripts. I mean, I really hope they're not writing custom SQL for that because it's pretty painful, especially if you have like 400 tables with like, half of them have like foreign key dependencies. So with Tonic, we automatically detect the relationship. So we know where the foreign keys are and how the tables are related. So if there's a particular user ID equals 22, you just write that query in Tonic. It'll automatically run the subset for you and generate for you all of the dependent tables with the dependent data on it. So you're still giving the developer production data around the bug that they need to diagnose if it's affecting a particular user.
Sure.
With all the data intact, and essentially minimizing your risk, which is a very difficult thing to do. Again, if you have like petabytes of data and a massive database, in production, subsetting can be a very powerful tool if you can pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's pretty incredible. So I'm going to pop open Tonic real quick, just so we can, for those of you on the video side of things, I'll try to try to talk through the audio side here. So I'm on Tonic's main website. So if anyone wants to go out there as they're listening to the podcast, there's kind of this graph, I guess I'll say, or UML diagram or class diagram. And it has kind of the primary keys and attaching foreign keys to it. And the first thing that came to my mind was, oh no, this is only for a SQL database. But then in kind of reading more, I noticed the integrations actually include Mongo database. So is there any reason that any other NoSQL database wouldn't work? You might have to just run your own APIs.
So your observation is correct. We did start off by supporting structured data. We're super proud to have launched Mongo about 2 months ago, I think it was. That is our first of many steps in supporting unstructured data, Mongo being the first, obviously, in this case. If there are scenarios where there's a database that's not supported, it does not take us long to turn around support for it, if it's not already on the roadmap. So I'm very excited about what it is that we're going to be pushing out. And the very bullish goal on this is to essentially be able to support all the databases that exist out there, reasonably speaking. But I think that pretty much accounts for anything you're probably running in production.
Sure. I mean, my big thought would be like DynamoDB on the AWS side of things would be kind of the next one. And for me personally, Firebase, because I'm a Firebase GD, would be interesting scenario as well. So, or Firestore, I guess I should say. Cool.
Yeah.
I just want to bring up real quick too. So I kind of threw together the like, I guess not beta look, but the kind of default data set when you don't have one. Whatever that's called. So what I'm showing here, there's this kind of this privacy hub call out, and I think we talked about this a lot, but it seems like there's kind of a pre-canned name generator and email generator and whatever there might be. So that's kind of a good way for Tonic to scan your data and say, hey, these fields seem sensitive. We need to create this generator for them. And it appears to me that there's also a way to say, well, your generator is okay, but like I need another one and add like a custom generator on top of that. Is that correct?
More or less, that is correct. Yeah. So there's a few different workflows that you would want to go through. This is the first of many workflows. It's the immediate one that Tonic throws at you and says, hey, we just scanned your entire database. There's a big step here that where you have to connect the source database. So once you do, Tonic runs through all of your data. I should probably mention that none of the data is actually stored. We keep like 100 in memory, but there is no actual data that gets stored in Tonic. So all of this is happening in flight. So anyway, so Tonic goes through all of your different, sorry, not your data, but the column names. I should probably clarify that. The structure of your data. And takes its first pass guess at, okay, first name probably is a sensitive data type, and the PII type, and the suggested generator. So like I mentioned before, there's like a few dozen different generators that we have that using any combination of them can probably satisfy thousands of different data scenarios. So the second workflow on that screen would be going into the database view. Then there's also a table view where you can go in, right? Exactly. And go into the actual columns. Like I said, there's like 100 records in memory just to kind of give you an idea as to what you're dealing with. But that drop down at the very top of that column, when you click on that of each of the table columns, click on that and you can either overwrite it or accept what Tonic recommends for you.
Gotcha. That's super powerful. So if I'm looking at this right now, it looks like this is the scrub data already, that it's kind of created on the fly.
That's right. Yeah. If you click on that switch in the upper right-hand corner that says preview, you can toggle on and off what your data looks like before and after.
Yeah. So to me, like this is a very traditional at Hotmail type of email, and then it kind of gets a little nuts.
Yeah. I want to call out one more really powerful feature. There's many here, but earlier I touched upon how your data behaves like production. So if you scroll a little bit to the right, there's a column there that says annual income. So in this demo scenario, we have two columns. One is annual income. It's a retail shop, and largest bill amount. So the idea here is like, the more money that you make, on average, probably the more money you're going to be spending in this, demo shop. So that data is correlated, right? So if you were doing this yourself arbitrarily, you could lose that correlation. And that's one of like millions of different scenarios where like, records could be correlated.
Yeah.
So using a combination of a few different generators, you could link those two columns to each other and say that, hey, these two are related. And so make sure that you maintain that statistical fidelity. So even though the data becomes de-identified, right, it's a different number.
Oh, wow.
Tonic is using mathematics to make sure that the correlation stays the same in the
That's
output
incredible.
database.
That's
Yeah.
not even like it's not taking data and saying this is numeric, make it some random numeric. It's literally keeping these tables the way they should. That's super powerful. I mean, especially for your QA folks that are like saying, here's these things I need to add up or summarize, and now all of the sudden, like the income or the summary view or whatever is off. So this totally
Yeah.
makes more sense. Wow, yeah, that's super
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
The math behind it is pretty exciting. It's beyond
so
me, but it's pretty cool stuff.
yeah, very sure. So I think like this is all great, and from a technical perspective, this is amazing. I kind of want to touch on just because I heard you talk about it, and that's kind of what led us down this path. Can you talk about like continuous marketing and how Tonic AI is helping with that?
Yes, continuous marketing is a term that I guess it's a term now. I kind of describe what I call continuous marketing. So the idea here is like, in the software world, we have this thing called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment or delivery, and this is in contrast to how software used to be built using agile or even worse, waterfall. So a lot of marketing teams didn't know how to keep up with this, right? It's like, okay, well, if your software team is launching features once a month, then I can build a campaign once a month or once a quarter. But no software team releases that way. Everyone's releasing multiple times a day, as following best practice. As soon as the feature is done, QA, it's out in production. It's actually in the hands of your customers before you even talked about it. You being the marketing team announcing this feature, right? So it's like, well, how does marketing fit in this new equation? And so I call it continuous marketing. And the idea here is that, as a marketing team, you want to acknowledge that your value proposition, in this case, your product, your features are getting in the hands of your customers before you even announce it. And so put in place the motions that can continuously enable them. So if you were doing like a launch once a year, twice a year, once a quarter, you probably want to do like a launch once a week, or at least an email update. Heck, as soon as the feature goes live, put a really nice Twitter thread out there. Just, simple thread, that explains and really dumps down what this feature is. If you can, a quick little video, how to. Make sure make sure the product docs are also updated, and that there's this continuity of experience where the customer has trust in your brand and knowing that, oh, this feature went live. Let me go to the docs. Oh, nice docs. Cool. Let me go to the homepage and see, oh, I can see that the feature has already been updated. The support team has been enabled and the sales reps are all enabled. Of course, this applies to B2B, but it can apply to B2C as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's great to bring up, and it's probably your background too, going from a systems engineer to a marketer. Like that whole thing has kind of evolved in your mind, I'm sure, as you've kind of grown through those roles. So totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to throw up the pricing page because I guarantee people are like, yeah, but this is crazy expensive, right? I don't know that you guys specifically call out price, but you have 3 plans currently, it looks like a starter, professional, and enterprise level. I guarantee like you guys are probably more on the enterprise side for the most part, but to me, like as a dev, this sounds wonderful just to run in all of my testing and things like that. What are you seeing like people use this for currently, size wise?
Yeah. So I could share this much. I don't like the idea of turning anybody away. We are working on a pricing model that essentially anybody should be able to afford.
Okay.
We do have a free trial, which I strongly recommend that you take advantage of. We just launched it. There is a lot of really good support behind it. I haven't seen a scenario yet where somebody walked away because of pricing. We do price by the size of the data. There's a few features that can turn on and off depending on the tier that you're in. But if you're a 5-person shop, you probably don't need SSO and some features that in the enterprise is super valuable for them. For them. So I would strongly recommend take advantage of the free trial, sign up for an account. We just kicked off these workshops where you can join a workshop and have a live instructor walk you through the features. We're also doing office hours, by the way. So once a week, keep an eye out on the webinars tab on the website and register for any one of them. We're really hands-on. It's not just marketing fluff. It's not just like, hey, yeah, shoot us an email and we'll get back to you. It's like when I say it's hands-on, I mean, I literally mean like one of our co-founders, head of engineering, Adam Kamor, literally handles the hands-on workshops and walks you through how to use Tonic and any questions you throw at him, he can help answer. So I recommend you take advantage of that.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are a tight-knit group that wants your customers to succeed. So that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I know I kind of had a rough outline going for this pod. I think we've covered it kind of roughly, but I want to make sure I'm not missing anything before we jump into our picks.
No, I think you probably covered most of what Tonic can do. We talked about the identifying data, how Tonic is different. We mimic production, the sophisticated math behind it. I barely scratched the surface on that. We talked about smart linking that just came out. September 28 is going to be a pretty big day, so keep an eye out for some big news coming out from us. I don't know if you happen to see this after, then enjoy what you probably are experiencing with Tonic. But if you're seeing this before, then keep an eye out for follow us on Twitter, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. We have some really cool stuff that like to share with people.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to grab a 28th link of some kind from you so we can put it in the blog. That sounds great. Awesome. Well, with that said, Omed, I think we're going to jump into Purrfect Picks now. And I'll go first. So just since I know you probably haven't seen this in the way we do it, but let me throw this up. So my first pick is, I always try to do a technical pick. So NuxtLabs just announced that they're kind of creating this new thing called NuxtLabs. This site is kind of wild when you go through it. I don't know if the animations are showing up quite. Yeah, I think so. Kind of crazy site, but if you dive into like the different docs and kind of see what's going on, I have a feeling we're gonna get kind of a lot out of NuxtLabs for the next things that are coming from Nuxt. So pretty cool. They were able to raise $2 million to get going with it, and can't wait to see what's going to come out of there. My second pick is Clickbait. I didn't think I wanted to click this ever on Netflix because it says clickbait, and that's kind of rough, right? Ended up burning through the whole thing over Labor Day weekend. It had some twists and turns, and I really enjoyed it. So it is TVMA. So kids, if you're out there watching, please don't watch it. How about you, Omed? Do you have anything, any picks that you want me to bring up on screen, or anything you just want to throw out there for the fans?
Yeah, so this is my latest hack. I could probably build a long list, but I'm going to give you one. So this is, I was on the market for a really good webcam, cool. A good 4K camera, something small, something easy. And I came across this app called Camo Studio, which you essentially can convert your iPhone into a full-fledged webcam. And that's what I'm using right now.
Is it Camera Studio? Is that what you said?
Camo, C-A-M-O.
C-A-M-O. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me look it up.
Camo Studio.
Cool. This one I think will work. Let's see here.
Yeah, that's it. So this is my pick.
That's
Super
really cool.
cool. Yeah, I saved money and the real estate. Now, the only downside is I do have to constantly plug and unplug my phone, but I still have my native camera on my laptop. So for calls where camera quality isn't that important, I'm still good to go. But calls like this, for example, I can easily upgrade to a camera that's as competitive as whatever's out there in the market.
Wow, that's really neat. I've done this on Android. There's a couple different apps for it. Have not seen this on iPhone, so that's sweet. I love it. I
Yeah.
guarantee the camera on there is better than anything else I own. So
I have another shout out that I want to give to another tool. It's called Opsera,
okay,
OPSERA.io. That team is phenomenal. I worked with them last year. I helped launch them out of seed, and they just seed stage stealth mode, and they just closed a Series A. This team essentially is doing what GitLab does, except you get to choose your own tools. So it's a CI/CD orchestration tool, and you bring whatever tool chain that you want to the table, and they'll essentially, orchestrate the tools, automate the tool chain working together, and then you can build pipelines on top of it. So that's my shout out.
well,
So yeah,
I like that one. I'll
new
dig into
startup
it.
I'm pretty bullish on.
Thanks for joining us, Omed. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Cool.